Welcome to the Pod Bay Door.
This is the Pod Bay Door. Join the crew every week for conversations on society, politics, and entertainment with a little bit of comedy and a whole lot of Las Vegas thrown in. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. We're glad you joined us. And if you get the chance, subscribe to us and give us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Also, check in with us on our YouTube channel at the Pod Bay Door Podcast. What is your favorite Las Vegas movie?
Well, you know, I guess it would be Leaving Las Vegas. I think because it gets away from the glitz. It really kind of shows, you know, to me it was quite realistic of what can happen.
Right.
Most films about Las Vegas are about people who are transient and come here and they don't live here.
Sure.
And that was a story of somebody who came and drowned here, you know, or came here deliberately to drown here.
Yeah.
You know, but that's what can happen. I've seen people like that. I mean, those of us who live here, particularly in older neighborhoods, I've seen, you know, I've known people like that. So
it's a very common decision, oftentimes, because Las Vegas pulls you back in.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you the number of people that I am friends with, acquaintances with, and they've left and come right back.
Yeah. There's an undertow.
Yeah, there is.
You know, and it will pull on oftentimes a person's weakness.
Yeah.
And you know, I had a friend who's lived here a long time,
right.
And before I moved here, he says, "Do you like to gamble?" I said, "Well, no." "Did you drink much?" "No, not really." "Okay, good. Then you're fine. Because if you like to do either one of them, this place will just, you know, it'll suck you down. It's particularly the gambling,
Right.
Because you know you can live a lot of places and not be subject to it.
Yeah.
But then you come here and it's everywhere and it's all the time, and you can bounce from place to place and. You know, you can just, it will grind you down.
You know, it's more prevalent or less so for the positions we were in.
Yeah.
You know, because it is shallow. It's this fatuous kind of situation that we're in. So I have no problem not going back. It was kind of it got to be an offensive situation because of the corporate environment.
Yeah.
But mainly it's the dealers. You know, it's the dealers. It's the slots. It's the, you know, in the gaming area. And it's quite sad sometimes. But there are some people that just come back. They don't have problems. They just come back because it's easy money. And it's good money. I mean, you know, you're looking at tokes. You know, if you're beyond a break-in house and you're pitching cards, you know, for real. I mean, you could make anywhere between 100 to 200 a day.
Yeah.
Now that's a good place. That's you know, Caesars, for example, and all the major houses, they still make some, you know, pretty major money, you know, per day or per shift. It depends. If people don't know, tokes are divided either individually. John will make whatever tips and he gets to keep those, or it's day for day or shift for shift, depending, and everybody shares, which gets to be a little strange because you know, you got it's a bell curve, I think, of tips. You know, there's one guy who's killing it and the other guy is just sleeping in, you know, in the and
it's going to depend on where you deal.
Yeah.
You know, I know that I think I'd mentioned on the podcast a while ago that, you know, I went to the library sale and I bought a book.
Right.
And inside the book later on I found somebody's pay stub from I think they worked at the Encore, which is, you know, one of the Wynn hotels.
Right.
And they were a craps dealer.
Right.
And I looked at it, you know, this person left their, you know, their pay stub and there wasn't, you know, it was just a receipt. And I looked at it and said, oh, well, based on this, they probably make $80,000 a year. Now, their base salary was minimum wage. It was like $8.95 an hour or something like that.
Right.
But where they were making their money, of course, were the tips. Now, the Wynn is going to have a higher level of player than you're going to find at the El Commode downtown, or you know, anything on Fremont Street, or you know, some of the farther north you go on the Strip.
But you know, if you work at a Wynn property, you have to be subject to harassment by Steve Wynn.
That's true, at least if you're a woman, right?
John and I were talking about the pre-show, and that, of course, Steve Wynn has announced a development of a new property here in Las Vegas. Lots of news coming out about that, and what's obviously, to follow, he sexually harassed people. And what's really funny is if you really talk to Las Vegas people like John and I do, and have all of us are like, yeah. Duh.
That's old news,
Yeah, old news.
As I had mentioned, John L. Smith, who's a well-known, he had a TV show for a while, I think, locally on the news, and he's a columnist in the newspaper, and he had written biographies back in the mid '90s, one about Bob Stupak, and another one about Steve Wynn, and it was Steve Wynn's power, since these were unauthorized. Yeah. Biographies, but they were well researched, and they weren't necessarily a hack job. I mean, they were pretty truthful. Sure. And Wynn was able to put the publisher out of business, bankrupt them by just tying it up in this book in litigation.
Right.
Eventually the book was published, and I do have a copy of it, and they talked about the sexual harassment and with Steve Wynn being a sexual predator back then. And right. This was, like I said, Smith's book came out, I'm going to say late 90s, 98, 99, might have been 2000.
Okay.
But, probably we're talking that era. So it's been 20 years pretty much.
Sure. Bob Stupak, of course, with the Stratosphere.
Yeah.
And what was it before Stratosphere?
One of the slippers, Silver Slipper?
No.
Vegas World. That's
yes,
right.
A space-themed
yes, right.
casino, which was...
but he had a place downtown. Didn't he also have the Silver Slipper, the Golden Slipper?
I believe so. He had an interest in it.
Yeah,
but Vegas World, which was...
Vegas World, that's right.
Wildly popular, as of course the Stratosphere is now.
Yeah.
But Bob's dead, right?
He died a couple years ago. But we saw him at the opening of the Venetian.
I remember tiny guy.
Yeah, what I remember was there were displays of bouquets of flowers and stuff, and there was this really gaudy, tacky, ugly flower display. I said, "Oh my God, who the hell brought that?"
Yeah.
And I got to go look at it. And I went up there, and it said, "Shelley, Mazel Tov, Bob Stupak."
Oh, Bob. Back to the movies. I'm a solid Soderbergh fan.
Yeah, I am too.
So I think about all the Vegas movies. The Hangovers and the Leaving Las Vegases, and I mean practically every film and every Netflix presentation either starts or ends up in Vegas somehow. But I'm still a fan of the Ocean's 11. Now, is it practical? No, of course not. We've recently had some pretty high-end robberies. I mean, Mr. Wynn, of course, he's had a bad couple of weeks.
Yeah, he has.
But with the robbery at his place,
karma's a bitch.
Yeah, isn't it? Well, he's blind. He's blind now, so. Ocean's 11. I like the cast, and it's just it's. I like the energy. It's Soderbergh to me has that quirk to him, much like Guy Ritchie. On the British level, not quite as.
Probably more successful too, I think.
I would say so on a larger scale. I mean, and he's not quite, and I mean this as a compliment. He and Richie is very slapdash. I mean, it's very uniquely cut, and of course it has the British, dry British humor. Whereas Soderbergh, it's this lilting sort of tongue-in-cheek effort, and of course he's making huge efforts as it regards changing the method of production and raising money.
Yeah.
So it's but Ocean's 11 and the cast and everybody else, those are my favorites for sure. Plus, you get to see, with the exception of the made-up casinos, which many of them are, like the Tangiers.
Right.
It is not here, folks.
Yeah. And even the one it was based on, right, is gone. The Stardust.
Stardust is gone. Yeah, exactly. It's very unique, and I think it's a celebration of Las Vegas. The cast involved in Soderbergh's films, especially with the Ocean's 11 franchise, they're having fun, which oftentimes, when I'm watching a Las Vegas film, it is written to be fun, like Hangover.
Yeah.
I don't perceive them as having fun. I'm an easy moviegoer. Now, someone made the comment that I'm an easy moviegoer for the movies that I see, which essentially is correct, but I see a lot of films, and honestly, it takes a lot for me to say a film is terrible. There's some redeeming quality, plus the effort of the artists involved. It's beyond what I'm doing right now. I'm doing this little weenie production here, and it's a massive undertaking. And it's so I never find it to be a bad film. Is Hangover, a blockbuster? Well, financially, I'm sure it is, as far as it goes as a franchise. But it's okay.
Yeah, but also in this film, I think in those Ocean series, the films, Las Vegas is one of the characters.
Yes.
Because it could only I wouldn't say it can only happen here, but there are very few places where it could happen, where you have the casino where they can steal from, and you have the massive hotels.
Yes.
and everything's set up like this.
Yeah.
It is pretty unique in that regards.
Right.
When I travel somewhere and I, for business, go to a hotel and I ask them, how many rooms in this place? Oh, well, we've got 206 or whatever, and I kind of laugh. We had that on one floor, man,
one
where
floor,
I worked.
one wing of one floor.
Yeah. We're pretty big, or we're packed. What do you mean you're packed?
Yeah.
The most you're going to have here is 400 or 500 people.
Isn't
Guys,
that
we
fun?
had that getting on the elevator.
And that's the thing about Las Vegas is I love to talk to, with as rarely as I love to talk to people, with present company excluded. I love to talk to people who have that fresh-faced view of Las Vegas. They don't have that ingrained view, like they either don't like it, and for some reason are here again, or they're experts after 3 visits, and that one gets me. But I love the people that are fresh-faced, and they just can't believe it when they get here. The facades are beautiful. I have had I'm so lucky to have traveled to most of the locations that have facades here.
Yeah.
And working at the Venetian, I was recently at St. Mark's Square. They did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
There's far less pickpocketing, and it's
no pigeon shit to deal with.
No pigeons or pigeon shit. It's a lovely place to go. So is it fake? Yes. Is it a facade? Yes. Is it shallow and meaningless? Yes. But you know what? When you first walk in for the first time, it is a wonderful thing to see, just like St. Mark's Square, the original is.
Yeah.
So I love to hear people like that, and like you said, when they're oh my gosh, we went to a Holiday Inn that had 300 rooms, and it's like, well, there's 300 right there. And it's just it was amazing what we dealt with at the Venetian, and during our tenure there, it was I believe second only to MGM as far as the total number of rooms and room size.
Yeah.
But back to the movies, only because we had such a controversy with Wonder Woman. I was proud of the Oscar voting. People are incensed. They cannot believe that Wonder Woman was completely snubbed. Now, if you look at it as one should, and I'm sorry for the technical people, the people that worked so hard in making a good film, but the thing is, you have to take it as a whole. They said, well, she should have gotten a nomination just because she was a woman director and she was brave to do it. No. Nora Ephron was brave, but the thing is, it didn't receive them because it wasn't supposed to. Was it a good film? Yes. Was it technically a beautiful film? Yes. But it wasn't nominated because it didn't qualify against what it was supposed to be. And so I'm really glad that the Oscars and the Oscar voters did not place it in there because of the current atmosphere of the Me Too movement and the women's movement and everything else. Fine, great movements and everything else, but it has nothing to do with qualifying for an Oscar. It would
cheapen it too, because it would always hang over, even if it was of the same caliber.
Exactly.
Of those. I was happy to see a movie like Get Out.
Yes.
Get the accolades that it did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it is a really good film.
Yeah.
And it gets you're gonna put it in a bucket. They call it a horror film. Not really.
Yeah.
It is horror on a psychological level, I think, and I understand that feeling. I know when you go into a place and people are being, overly nice to you and going out of their way to tell you like, well, you fit in with us just fine
Right.
on the surface, and yet you realize I don't belong here.
Yes.
Like I said, I lived in Japan all those years, and particularly when I lived out in the country, people treated me like that.
Yeah.
And I said, I know they don't like me being here,
Yeah.
but they're being nice to me.
Yeah, and see, that's another thing, and you have seen it firsthand. When you are a Caucasian American male,
Yeah.
and spend that many years in some place, you learn firsthand that racism and things of that nature are not strictly American.
Oh no, not at all.
Not at all.
It was
It's
funny
human,
that I would have Japanese tell me, he said, "Oh, we can't imagine what it's like to be live in a racist country because we're all Japanese." Well, not all of those of us that weren't Japanese, and then there were those who were of Korean descent, born in Japan,
Yes.
had never been to Korea any more than I've been to Ireland. I have Irish ancestors. I have German ancestors.
Right.
I have French ancestors. I haven't been to any of those those countries, unfortunately, at this point.
Right.
And I'd like to go, but they have Koreans who were born in Japan. They speak Japanese. They have Japanese names.
Yes.
But they have to have a alien registration card, just like I did.
Yes.
And when Japanese then find out somebody's Korean, their attitudes change towards them.
Absolutely.
So they are definitely basing it on race. So
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of at least 3 instances where I was refused service because I was not Japanese.
Yeah.
And when I tell that to Japanese people that I knew, they would say, "Well, were you drunk?" I said, "No, I was trying to get drunk. I mean, maybe I'd gone to a bar. I just got off work, so I didn't have a chance."
But they weren't surprised, were they?
Well, they tried to say, well, they kept trying to write, well, maybe they didn't understand what you were saying. No, they didn't speak English or something. No, I understood quite well that they didn't want me in there, because I do understand when they tell me, even in English, Japanese only. I understand that, and that's fine. I'll leave, but don't tell me you're not racist, because I was just barred from that, and because of the fact that I was not Japanese. So
ethnocentrism is again, it's not an American thing; it's a human thing. So I'm glad to hear a story like that.
Yeah,
and I'm sad you had to go through that, but I mean,
So I do have the feelings of that, and I also have the feelings of what it's like to be harassed. Walking down, when I lived out in the country, it didn't really happen when I moved to Tokyo, but for the first 2 years I was there, I lived out in the countryside. Walking down the street, to us, we think of, I lived in a city that was 500,000 people.
Sure.
But it was kind of like, to make an analogy to a city here in the U.S., maybe like Akron, Ohio.
Okay.
So it's big enough. You've heard of it. It's blue collar type of town.
Yeah.
But it's still not. It's not L.A. It's not New York. It's not Chicago.
Right.
It's kind of Midwesterny, blue collar town. And I would say that we probably had. There were 100 registered foreigners out of the 500,000, of which I think something like 75 of them were Koreans. So they would not be recognizable of real Caucasians, African Americans, or black people, or whatever, who were non-Asian. There were probably 15 or 20 of us. Yeah. So we were a sight. And walking down the street, cars would slow down and roll down the windows sometime and go, "Haro, haro." That gets really annoying really fast. And it was worse if you were a woman. How much? Because they assumed all foreign women were prostitutes. Wow. And they were teaching English. So it got, and going into a bar, it's the same thing. They all got to come up and say, "Haro, this is a pencil." "Yeah, this is my finger. Fuck you." After a while, you get really tired of being bothered all the time. So somebody said women getting harassed with wolf whistles and catcalls. I understand that. Believe me, I can understand how it must. Oh, Jesus Christ! I get really pissed off.
You're just mad they didn't ask you how much, huh, John?
That's right.
Yeah.
I would have told them how much.
But I wanted to mention, we had mentioned earlier in an earlier episode about the wild horses, the Mustangs here in Nevada, and what a great movement that is. I was able to find a movie, very slim pickings right now as far as production announcements in Nevada, Las Vegas specifically. But there is a movie coming out with Susan Sarandon, who her activism sort of overshadows her acting, in my opinion. And I'm really not a Tim Robbins fan, but he's got Shawshank in his belt. So, but it's called Mustang, and it's an interesting theme on the Mustangs as it regards Nevada's care of them. It is the theme of the movie is they are convicted convicts. They are felons who have earned by their actions within the prison the right to care for and deal with these wild Mustangs. And that's has a release date in 2018. But it's called Mustang, Susan Sarandon. I just thought that was interesting, considering we spoke about that earlier.
Yeah. And she does another Tim Robbins film that where he didn't act in it was Dead Man Walking.
Yes.
That was a really powerful.
Absolutely.
film. Yeah.
Absolutely. But John, Rolling Stone says pot is here to stay. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I thought
so?
that back in the 70s.
You know, Mr. Sessions aside, which is coming up in my notes, but Rolling Stone's article went on and on about how it's here to stay, and that the wheels are greased, and Colorado is an example of a positive effort, and so on and so forth. Nevada and Las Vegas being what Rolling Stone says is going to be a pivot point for the progression of marijuana through the United States, including the first lounges, the first specific pot lounges. And let's see my notes here. There's one called it is a vape lounge that is going to have marijuana, and it's also an arcade. Because I've been to movies and laundry and arcades and bars. There was a Westwood arcade that I went to when I was going to college, but this is called Vape and Play. And that apparently is going to be the toe that sticks in the water of the first marijuana lounge, and in Colorado, not in Las Vegas, but in Colorado. However, if you've been following the news, Jeff Sessions and all the boys up there on the Hill, it is not going to fly federally. It is going to continue to be illegal. So that means the states and the cities, including Las Vegas especially, are going to be flying in the face of federal law. Now, what do I've made my opinion clear about marijuana, and I've yet to see the tax benefits, but we've yet to see the tax benefits. So we're talking, I think, in Las Vegas, documented 19 million so far in revenue, 15% of which goes to taxation, and 300 dispensaries. That one knocked me over. I couldn't believe that already. But what do you think now, as far as marijuana in Las Vegas? I mean, what do you?
I haven't. I maybe because I don't work anymore in the industry,
right.
and I'm kind of shut off from some of that. I really haven't seen any negative effects. I mean, being a resident here,
right.
And again, with pot now legal in California, people don't have to come here for that. They might come here incidentally for that, or if they're coming from a state that doesn't allow it.
Exactly.
So I don't know for the guests that come here how that affects things. But I know, and I've said this in the past, given a choice between being around stoners or being around drunks, I'll take stoners, because some people have the tendency to get, as we do know that from here, from being drunk, they have a tendency for some men for violence, not just men, but
true.
for
That's
violence.
true.
And I don't see that with the stoners that I know, because they're just too mellowed out to muster much of a fight or get upset.
Now, our latest news on the legal battle for it, which there hasn't been really a battle. It's just the bureaucracy that getting all this stuff through. Marijuana is no different than any other regulation being passed. The Nevada Tax Commission passed a 268-page book, obviously, of regulations that is going to go to our House and to be voted on, which is apparently going to be shot right through. Some notable senators here in Nevada have already said that they are pot smokers for one reason or another. I think they've all claimed medicinal, just not to not be on that strange fence. But you mentioned California, and Rolling Stone mentioned this, as well as Forbes magazine mentioned this. California has a huge problem now because they already had an infrastructure built around the medicinal stores that were approved. Now these are going to have to be reapproved and refile and re-regulated, which means that they've, if it's a mom and pop, they've already spent all their money trying to get this going. And it's not doing as well as people think. I mean, there are millions of dollars being, spent on pot, and we'll talk about that in a second. But California is crying tears of policing. Because they not only are going to have the policing of the approved pot selling properties, but they're going to have to deal with the policing of the ones that can't be re-regulated and cannot be reapproved, and all of the illegal pot places. So they're just changing one illegal pot place for another. You go from just your everyday college neighborhood dealer to a place that was approved for medicinal, now no longer is, but they're like, up your ass. I already did this, and they're going to continue business. But they're going to shut them down.
Now I know people grow their own, and I don't think I haven't talked to them in a while, but I don't think that's going to change. They're all of a sudden not going to pull up their pot plants. And I'm going to go down the street and pay. Those prices it's expensive,
hugely expensive.
And one of the things I have a friend that lives in Colorado, and he's got friends who frequent the dispensaries. They're into the edibles.
Yes.
And
everybody is, apparently. I didn't realize.
Yeah, and I mean he's into these mints that are, $4 or $5 a pop. And I said, well, I know that they have been able to extract the THG and be able to market that where it's far more potent now than it is than when it's grown naturally. And I've always said, whatever it is with food, whatever, I'm opposed to processing things.
Right.
That you want to have it in the natural state as much as possible, which is why prefer apple over apple juice, because you've removed the fiber, you've intensified the sugar rush you're going to get from it. So it's just, I think an apple's healthier than apple juice. So I kind of think that grass in its natural state is the way to go.
I think so.
And I remember, way back in the 70s, we were thinking, it'd be legal, it'd be great, because you can always be assured of getting the good stuff like you can with alcohol. Mm-hmm. We know that beer is only, 3-6% alcohol, something like that, depending on what you get. And whiskey's going to be 43% alcohol. It's going to be 86 proof. And it's controlled and regulated. And when back in the 70s, it was like, okay, well, we don't know how good this shit is. It could be really good. It could be, we had Maui Wowie, Acapulco Gold. Those are some of them. Or it could be skunk weed.
Well, yeah, and I mean, there's the whole argument. Pardon me, all the pot smokers for if I get these wrong, but I believe it's Invictus and Sativa. Those are the two, and they say they're talking about the broadleaf against the narrowleaf and so on and so forth. And one creates this high, one creates this high, one is more of this, one is more of that. And based on all the information that I've read, there is no data to support any of that. It's just nonsense. I mean, the people love to say that, but there's no data regarding that. So that I notice that people are putting that in front of them, saying that well, it's just going to be this, or it's just going to be that, and we don't understand why the feds are trying to regulate against it. I mean, the sativa is only this, and that never was my point, but see, my point was a long time ago was set aside. I mean, I've lost the war, but the one thing that I've learned, and I called many of my friends in the entertainment industry and band members. There's nothing pot smokers and drummers. Yeah, but band members, stage hands, and I called several of my friends who I know purchased marijuana here in Las Vegas, and they have stopped going to dispensaries for the very plain fact it is ungodly expensive. And what people don't realize is that when the dispensaries opened, these 300 some odd dispensaries opened for the first time, they had special pricing. $55 per gummy, whatever, was a special price. It's going up. It's now $65 in some places.
Wow.
$65 for one gummy, one high. Actually, I believe it's two. But a little tiny gumdrop.
Yeah.
And $65 to get high. I don't know what, twice maybe, or once if you're a freak. People are going back to their old method.
Yeah.
They're going back to their weed guy.
Yeah.
And I just wonder how that's going to happen. And nobody's mentioning organized crime involvement because I think they're waiting. I think they're like vultures in the sky. I think they're waiting for everything to settle down, and then because the marijuana industry is owned by the billionaires already. They're brilliant men, and they're billionaires for a reason, and they saw the money. They don't care what it is, and they're going to ride the marijuana pony until he dies in the dust.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Las Vegas is going to be a positive or negative thing, but I'll be I find it interesting. The feds are fighting it tooth and nail.
Yeah, and that's what bothers me about that. It just shows how authoritarian and anti-democratic that whole administration really is. They don't give a shit what people think. People have already voted this. This is the way it is. And, but no, we're going to oppose it. Yeah. Unless it's something that they are in favor of, or a particular state is. If you get some really hardcore right-wing state, and then they're going to say, oh, well, hey, we want to leave this all up to the states to decide.
Right.
So they play both hands against the middle. Like
now, you and I spoke about bastards. You and I spoke about something off camera last week.
Yeah.
And regarding marijuana, and it has nothing to do with all the social nature of it.
Yeah.
Actually, no, that's not true. When I mean social networking nature and all the marketing and so on and so forth, we talked about the fact that many of the proponents of it that are not specifically a proponent of it professionally, like a marketer or a politician, just an everyday person that's a marijuana smoker, suddenly when they're put on the spot and given a forum like you are sitting here on the show, they clam up. And they become embarrassed. And, oh my God, I can't talk about marijuana because I'll get fired. And that's something I don't understand. And your generation, I think, I don't know, what do you hear? Do you talk to people of your generation, and they're card carrying, sign carrying members of the marijuana movement, and when they're put on the spot, do they stop talking?
No, I don't think so. People I know, there's a younger generation that had the license in the early days there, right? They had the license for medicinal purposes. People that I knew were always on the fringe. Yeah. So they grew their own in the backyard, whatever, or they had, again, you were talking about people who, they're not going to change their habits. So they're going to continue to do it. I mean, and when we thought about the legalization of it, again, it was just like you be in possession of it. Mm-hmm. You can grow it your own. You can do whatever hell you want. You can grow it like you grow tomatoes. Right. The idea of the dispensary is fine. But yeah, if they're going to be too expensive, then people are going to go back to their old ways of doing it, because otherwise it's too much. Now, for the occasional user, I think, or somebody says, hey, I don't know anybody in town. Where we worked at the Venetian, these dispensaries would have been great, because the idea that, we weren't asked very often, but I'm sure that those requests have gone up now because of the fact it is legal, and people want to know where they can buy it, and they can't buy it on the Strip. Yeah. And you have to know that you're going to have to go off the Strip, to get it. And of course, there's no smoking in your room. I mean, even of cigarettes in most of the hotels. Yeah. So there's edibles, whatever. You can't stop that.
That's true.
True. But we were asked now and then. But that would have made that aspect of the job a lot easier. Yeah.
Well, if there's anything that I agree with the Rolling Stone and Forbes, Rolling Stone specifically, about their article, they this is my term, but Las Vegas is going to be a harbinger of what is to come as it regards the marijuana issue, without question. I mean, we're going to be the stand. Colorado may have been the first to fall on the sword and make the bridge, but I think we're going to be carrying the flag across, good or bad. I don't know. I want to see some of those tax dollars, and yet when I say that, the tax dollars aren't coming to me. I don't have kids. I'm not going to have kids, and they're going to the little kids, and maybe they'll benefit your boy. I don't know, but 15% of 19 million is not bad. And if we don't have a bunch of zombies rolling down the street, eating gummy bears, I think I'll be okay with it. Well, thanks, John. I appreciate the. I look to John for to stabilize me. John has 10 years on me, and he's seen more life. So luckily, he'll land my balloon if I'm going.
And I've been stoned more times.
Yes, by a large percentage. Next week, John, one of the topics we're going to talk about CinemaCon.
Okay.
A big convention here in town. Everything that is movies. Apparently a huge Avatar announcement is coming. Some of which is going to involve Las Vegas as far as the production. Very excited about that. Apparently, Cameron's shooting, I think 3 at this point in a row.
Wow.
He's just going to shoot the shit out of Avatar and then be done with it, I think. But we'll talk about that, more Las Vegas stories, and coming up on 1 year. So this is episode 47. Episode 48 is next week, and then episode 49
is a 1 year?
Is a 1 year anniversary. So we're going to hopefully have some surprise guests. But John and I will be...
We'll stop off at the dispensary.
Yes.
We'll do that to celebrate.
Yeah, that's right. And have a milkshake. Yes. But John and I will be here, and we thank all of you for your listenership. If you have any questions, please let us know. But we'll see you all next week. Thanks to everyone listening and watching. You can catch the Pod Bay Door on the Podbean app or any of your favorite podcast apps, including iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, and Stitcher Radio. You can watch the show on our YouTube channel at the Pod Bay Door Podcast. Please download, like, and subscribe. Our social connectivity screen is coming up. Check in with us on Facebook, Twitter, and WordPress. The Pod Bay Door is closed and talent is out. Hey everybody, thank you very much for tuning into the show. We would love to hear your show suggestions and comments. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, please click to subscribe. You can also connect with us on Facebook using @PBD Podcast, on Twitter using @TPBD Podcast, and on WordPress at thepodbaydoor.wordpress.com.